by Bethsheila Kent at the Bredor Lakes and Watershed Interpretive Centre. Bethsheila Kent's a passionate Cape Breton naturalist who's been exploring and uncovering wonderful gems around the Bredor watershed for many a year, and all of Cape Breton for that matter. She will be sharing her knowledge and experience with us during our Natural History series this summer at the Bredor Lakes Watershed and Interpretive Centre. Bethsheila, thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure, Jessica.
So how did you become first interested in natural history?
Well, from a very early age, I was introduced to the natural history of Cape Breton Island. My father was a great wanderer and a great lover of the plants and animals of this fabulous place that we're so privileged to live in. And I, as a child, pretty much followed him around wherever we went and listened to all of the things that he told me. And as a young adult even, I was kind of a book nerd and a bird nerd, and I was still interested in all those things that Cape Breton had to offer in terms of natural history, and spent a great deal of my own time just roaming the hills and the beaches and the valleys and having a grand time just trying to figure out what everything was. If it flies in front of my face, I have to know exactly what it is. If it's growing from the ground and it's not something that I've recognized from previous outings, then I do everything in my power to quickly identify it, and I nail it down to genus and species, and I get it as close as I can, and I study all of the relevant information to make sure that I can drill it right into my brain. And I don't know, I guess, like I said, it's cellular.
Yeah, it really is a passion.
Yeah.
What do you think are the benefits for other people to learning about nature who are just getting started?
In order to be a whole person, I believe that it's very important for us to be really comfortable with who we are. And that is not just where we live and what we do in the workplace to provide for ourselves, but to be a whole and well-rounded person, we have to include the world outside of ourselves. And here in Cape Breton, where we have a big island with not very many people and a whole lot of wilderness, probably the easiest way to do that is by exploring the natural world and appreciating its richness.
So our next seminar is going to be on birding.
Yes.
What makes the Bredor watershed a good place for birders and for learning about birds?
Bredor is an inland saltwater sea. It is unique in the fact that it is inland and saltwater together. It covers an enormous area in the southern part of the island, over 418 square miles of surface of what comprises Cape Breton Island is filled by the Bredor Basin and the Atlantic Ocean waters that come and go twice daily. Thus, we have a unique set of habitats. We have the uplands that comprise the watershed from the highlands and on down, and we have all of those areas that ring Bredor, the East Bay Hills, the Waikagami Hills. All of it make one gigantic package of varying habitats that are filled with appropriate flora and fauna. And that is what makes the watershed and the Bredor Lake so unique in the world. We get saltwater species that are normally found along the Atlantic coast in terms of the avifauna of the birds that we see here. We have a marine ecology that is very, very similar to the Atlantic waters offshore, although the Bredor is a little bit warmer. And there's some species within the lake's waters that are found to the south of us, but regardless, it's pretty similar. And that too is unique. There's not very many lakes that you can visit anywhere in Canada that you can fish for lobster. Let's face it, this is pretty cool. And around the Bredor, we attract a number of bird species that would not be found in other parts of Cape Breton Island simply because of the presence of the salt water. Mm-hmm. Common and Arctic tern are found on a lake instead of in an ocean habitat. Mm-hmm. That sort of thing.
What could somebody expect to walk away from your next seminar on birding with?
I talk a lot about birdsong, and although people hear birdsong constantly, they don't necessarily know what birdsong is appropriate to the species. So when I'm doing my slide presentation, I talk a lot about that, and I also talk a lot about habitat, because most birds are specific to a certain habitat, whether they're insect eaters or seed eaters, or perhaps during the wintertime they're seed eaters, and in the summertime they enhance their seed diet with insect protein, that sort of thing. So I think that folks who come out for that particular presentation will walk away with a greater understanding of the sorts of birds one will encounter in the Bredor habitat. The magnolia warbler is very, very easy to coax to a perch and have it exposed in the open so that you can look at its beautiful plumage.
Amazing.
Let's see if I can do it. Of course, it has variations of its song, but it's just a 3-note and then doodle, and that's it, do 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 doodle. Some of them can be stubborn. They answer back, but they might not show themselves, but it's very easy to get them to call back.
Cool. Yeah. Do you have any advice for people who are just learning about natural history?
I think that my advice is pretty basic and common sense. Don't allow yourself to become overwhelmed. If you're out, especially in the early springtime, and you're investigating wildflowering plants, there is such an abundance of them, and some of them are similar looking, some of the leaves are similar. It gets down to nuances, a shiny leaf versus a dull leaf, a gray leaf versus a bright green leaf. Don't allow yourself to be overcome by those small details. Concentrate on just a few species. Always carry a really good field guide with you that you can easily refer to. Do not be afraid to ask questions of somebody who may have answers for you, and don't be afraid to go on the internet and check around when you're out and about and you see bird species or you see plants that you want to know more about. Don't be afraid to check out the reference guides. Don't be daunted by the amount of information that you're going to get, and don't give up. It's all so totally worthwhile. This year I was absolutely thrilled. 2 new plants appeared on the roadsides. And as you're aware from my first presentation here called Ditch Beauties and Other Roadside Attractions, which of course deals with the wildflowers that one encounters along our highways and byways, I found 2 new flowers this year. One was called a cuckoo flower, and it's a little tiny white flower that grows atop a long stalk. It's a member of the mustard family, so it only has 4 petals, as do all cruciferi, so that's the mustard family. And it is a wetland plant, not invasive, not aggressive at all. But because we had such a remarkably wet spring, this thing popped up virtually everywhere, and that was really cool. And in disturbed places, we get all kinds of things happening as seeds get moved around, gravels are trucked from quarries and pits and deposited along our roadsides. And this year I found something called a yellow rattle or yellow rattlebox, which is a very cool little plant. It has an unusual irregular flower, and its seed pod is very large, a swollen seed pod, and as the seeds dry out in it and you shake them, they rattle, thus the common name. And I've never encountered it before, and I have now seen it not only on roadways within the watershed, but in other roadways around Cape Breton. This is all we have. This is our only planet, and it's up to us to learn about it so that we can protect it.